Before there was light, before there was God and the archangels, there wasn't nothing. There was the darkness, a horribly destructive, amoral force that was beaten back by God and his archangels in a terrible war.
Well, that is just fan-freaking-tastic, isn't it?
I think from the beginning of this season, they've kind of hinted that there needed to be a showdown between sister and brother.
Dean, even the monsters are scared.
Chuck talks about it in terms of yin and yang and, you know, a balance in the universe.
Really, the center of their disagreement is a family dispute.
With the darkness, we wanted to really get across what we're dealing with is big, epic, not human, kind of a very aggressive, angry force.
Oh, it's coming. For all of us. There's nothing hunters or any human can do about it.
We had this notion for there was the darkness and there was the light, that the darkness would take a form that we could understand.
There are very few other shows that kind of approach the more epic, ancient, biblical stuff in the way that we do. So it was kind of a way to put a spin on that. But at the heart of it was a way we thought to tell kind of a sibling story. God is our prime motivator, and the kind of the conflict between the two of them and the resolution between the two of them is really the core of our season. So really the story was, you know, tell an epic story that is at the same time a small, personal story. That's what we do best. Personal stories on a cosmic scale.
He needs her in a way. One needs the other. So that's this whole relationship between brother and sister here, is that you need opposites, you know, for everything to be in unison, to have a harmony. I think that's an interesting, you know, theory.
The way Amara unfolded, the idea of the darkness unfolding in that manner is kind of fascinating.
We're introducing something that has never really existed in any realm, that is a family member of God. It plays into, I think, what this show was originally built on, and that is the foundation of two brothers and their relationship.
Good night, Chuck.
That bitch.
We get to see that God's going through the same thing that we're going through. When you're having a struggle, it's making that decision to look in the face, see what you're dealing with, and kind of move forward. So it's nice to have the kind of marriage of God and Amara and Sam and Dean both dealing with kind of a sibling rivalry and deciding how to deal with it.
You know, this really gets back to the Greek mythology. The Greek mythology is much more like our mythology, where you have, it's much more personified. They had families, and they had jealousies and hatreds. They were much more human-like in their portrayal and in their behavior, rather than a remote, unseeable, unknowable presence.
The concept that God would have family is, you know, aunts, uncles, you know, Thanksgiving dinner. It's like, what? And we knew it would resonate with Sam and Dean because they advertise family.
Hands off the wheel.
And Sam and Dean always look for the solution that's going to lead to kind of rebuilding those bridges and rebuilding those relationships.
That's one of the great things about, you know, this show and that story is that they continue to be rocks for each other.
With God in the darkness, you've got the opposite of that. They had a conflict, you know, rather than trying to resolve it, God basically locked her away. And you're kind of seeing the fallout of that. So in some ways, you're seeing the fallout of the opposite thing Sam and Dean do. And, you know, the resentment that causes and the destruction that causes. For Amara, Dean is the first human she ever saw. And as we get to know Amara later and later in the season, I think we realize, and certainly in the finale, which is really after his emotional connection.
We will always help each other.
As far as Dean, when he looks at the darkness, it's more like she's offering him a way to kind of embrace her kind of nothingness. And there's no pleasure, but there's also no pain. And if you're Dean Winchester, you're really living in more of a world of pain than a world of pleasure anyway. So I think that's very appealing in some ways to him.
You bore the mark. I am the original mark.
The mark of Cain and tying it to Amara gave a nice cohesive storyline from where we started the mark of Cain a few years ago. And by being a brand or some sort of birthmark, it also ties her closely with Dean, which we've shown through the year that Dean's helpless around her.
It's not necessarily even an attraction, as more of this connection that draws him to her and kind of renders him helpless and defenseless. And because it is such a foreign thing to him, he doesn't know how to handle it. He doesn't know how to deal with not being able to rely on the instincts that he always gets to rely on.
She can't deny that odd feelings are being stirred up in her that she is both frightened of and wary of.
You don't want to be alone. Not really.
I mean, hell, maybe that's why you wanted me. But deep down, you didn't really want me. Because I'm not him.
I think she's very perplexed by it. There is like a reluctant respect, though, I think. And then getting to relate to Dean and hear him talk about the world and hear him defend the world. And he says, yeah, the world's flawed, but I'm not done with it yet. I'm not ready to give up on it. And there's something she can appreciate about that, even if it's not enough to make her say, oh, okay, everything's great, cool.
I mean, the last time, when she was in prison, there was no humanity. It was God and 4 archangels, and that was it. So she's looking around now, and she's like, basically, I was locked away for this. I mean, look at this place. And I think that for her, her initial kind of, there's a culture shock. Her initial experiences or feeling is revulsion.
Still learning all you can about the world.
If nonsensical slogans attached to idiotic pictures of domestic animals counts as the world.
I don't think we're ever dealing with an Amara that is a huge fan of humanity, but I think she comes to appreciate other parts of it.
She sees the complexity of the world that he's created, and I think that there is some strange appreciation of that. You know, she can't help but kind of get to be moved by some of that.
As a child, we had her looking at these scenes, going through them on the computer screen and acknowledging the awesomeness of the Alps and the various things that God had set in motion. And it was so foreign to her, she can't understand that. And the character, even as an adult, is very childlike in that way. It's all a very innocent point of view.
I'm looking for God.
Oh, of course. We all look for God in all things.
No, I need an actual meeting in a room.
I think that softens her enough that we are able to kind of take her out, you know, give her a redeeming story. Give her a story that allows her to exist in our world without wanting to kill everything, basically. And I think her relationship with Dean and ultimately her relationship with her brother are the things that really hammer that home.
Do you see what's happening? All your chosen, they are suffering. Show yourself!
She kind of gets pushed to a breaking point because she's so misunderstood and because she can't explain herself and because she can't communicate with the one being with whom she has some sort of relationship because he's who knows where.
Once we knew that God's sister was going to come in and be our bad guy for the season, you know, you then need God to show up. You need that relationship. You need that emotional connection. You need that confrontation.
I assume you're aware that she's out and about, tanned, rested, and ready. I mean, that's why you're back, right?
Nobody knew at the outset of this that we were going to actually bring in God as a character and that we were going to affirm that Chuck was God. But it just, as the season began unfolding in the writer's room, we began to realize that this really was a dysfunctional family drama and that if you didn't bring in Dad, then you were missing a huge chunk of the story.
So I think this is the perfect, reason for God to come back. And everything that he's created is in jeopardy. Not just humanity, but the entire universe.
From God's point of view, he did what he had to do. And even if he has regrets, I don't know if he's super apologetic about it.
When he faces Amara, he's facing his own guilt.
It didn't have to be like this. I loved you, brother.
Because he locked her away. And however he rationalizes it and says, well, I had to do it because she was so dangerous and deadly and lethal and she was going to destroy my creation. In his heart, he knows that she was sort of driven to that by the way he trivialized her and marginalized her. So partly, I don't think he wants to face his responsibility in the whole thing.
You know, I was a crappy, terrible god. But at least I was never a coward.
By not facing Amara, he doesn't really have to face what he did.
Light needs dark. Dark needs light. If you blow one of them up, then,
it wouldn't be a good thing.
It'd be really not a good thing. Like, end of reality, not good.
I think that, when we're looking at light and dark, and when we're looking at kind of this idea of balance, that's something that was very important to us kind of going forward. And the idea that the universe is kind of on a scale. You can't have light without darkness, and you can't have darkness without light. And I think Chuck, for as angry as he was at his sister, he understood that, and that's why he locked her away. So she remained a counterweight, a kind of a imprisoned one, but a counterweight.
The idea of light and darkness being that important without that balance, the world is not the world. And I think that's a really remarkable idea.
I think naturally, Because she is the opposite of her brother, when she comes into that world, he's had such a head start that there's no way to, like, balance it out.
My brother will dim and fade away into nothing. But not until he sees what comes next. Welcome to the end.
I think whatever she does has to be so strongly in opposition because that's who she is. And I think at first she doesn't see it as hurting anything.
What if there were no rules? No pain, just bliss.
All she wants is serenity and peace and blackness.
Forever. She makes quite a few valid points about the mess the creation is, and wouldn't it be better if there was just, you know, calm? And I'm like, you know, fair point, well made.
How did you do that?
This idea that nothingness is bliss doesn't quite play in our everyday world, and that's basically what she's selling.
Once she's been weakened, I will take the mark back from Amara and use it to seal her away.
Someone needs to bear the mark.
Sam volunteered.
Sam and Dean always joke, like, the worst decisions we make are when we try to do the hard thing, not the smart thing, you know? And that's kind of where Sam and Dean have found themselves. And that's how and why they're willing to go, like, all right, I trust this is your decision, you trust this is mine. I'm proud of you for it. You know, gonna miss you.
This thing's more wider than their problems. And, you know, this season, well, I mean, they'll disagree on solutions.
How many times do I have to say that this is a horrible idea? About as many times as I have to say, okay, then what else we got?
Pretty much they're in lockstep in what it is they have to do.
You won't carry the bomb. You'll be the bomb.
In a way, they always fight the good fight. No matter what they're going through, there's a clear objective, and that is to fight for those who can't fight.
I'm dying. And when I'm gone, the cosmic balance between light and dark, it's over.
I don't know that anybody actually wanted the darkness to be destroyed, because ultimately you're destroying the balance of what is and what should be.
That interplay of God and the darkness being this, you know, the big bad that we've set out to conquer this season, ultimately realize we actually can't conquer the ultimate evil because it's part of the fabric of this universe, which I think is kind of an interesting resolution.
What you've made, it's beautiful. It took me a long time to see that.
I think what she comes to appreciate is that they can have balance with each other without her needing to prove herself by getting rid of the creation that he's made.
I wish that we could just be family again.
I do too.
That can exist, and then they can have their own relationship and have the balance there. And I think that's pretty cool that she can put aside her pride and try to find that agreement. I mean, who knows how long that'll last, because they're siblings, and we'll see.
I think Amara ultimately is a very sympathetic character. It's not that she is destruction, it's that she wanted to protect that relationship so strongly that her reaction was violent. No matter how evil they are, what they want is emotional fulfillment, which is, I think, what most people want. You know, call it love, call it friendship, call it whatever, and we're just trying to reflect that in the show.
If there's any tragedy in her, it's the insight she has is that her life could have been different. But she's a tragic figure because she has that awareness, but it's gone now. It's slipped away from her. She yearns for something that she's tasted a little of, but has yet to have fully realized. And so I think she leaves us at the end of the season with a glimmer of the possibility that there is more to her future than she's experienced. That's what I think makes her sad, is she's wasted all this time in sulking and wanting revenge and wanting to get back at someone and, you know, not really living up to any potential.
My hope is that the audience will have some sympathy for her and kind of, or at the very least, understand her point of view.
These kinds of stories are always the most difficult kind to tell. When you say there's a threat looming over not only the planet, but the universe, and it's going to destroy everything. Well, how do you dramatize that from week to week and make it interesting?
But it all just started from a phrase, the darkness, that everybody had a vision in their mind of what it looked like. That it ultimately morphed into a psychological force and a family force and an actual person. That took a long time. So that's kind of how these things happen.
One thing you have the luxury of in television where you don't have in novels or comic books or things like that is you have a lot of different brains working at the same time. You know, you're getting different ideas thrown out, and, you know, I think if you go in at the beginning of the year monolithically thinking this is where we're going and these are the steps we're going to take to get there, you're doing yourself a disservice. And it's just about being willing to trust in yourself and being willing to trust in the people you work with and kind of this mythology and this world you've created or helped create. And that's the great part of having a show that's been around for so long. We have so much momentum, we have so much history, we have so many things to build off of that you're always finding a new way to approach things.